Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Frel, your professor.
Hello class, good morning. We are now on our third topic, conditions of employment. We have two objectives for this topic. First is to identify the different regulations under conditions of employment, and the second is to differentiate the covered and not covered conditions of employment by law. So the first is, who are those employees who are excluded? One is the government employees. So this pertains to all government employees who are covered by the Civil Service Law, except those under government agencies or corporations that are incorporated to the corporation code or charters that are being governed by the labor code. Second are the family members, because there are times where relevant to family businesses, they are excluded since family members are dependent on the employer. Third are managerial employees or staff. These are those whose primary duty consists in the management of the establishment and officers and members of the managerial staff. So under Rule 1, Section 2 and Book 3 of the Implementing Rules and Regulations, it provides that the primary duty consists of the performance of work directly related to management policies of employer. They execute under general provisions, work along specialized or technical line experience. Example is the case of Pinaranda versus Banganga Plywood Corporation in 2006, where the court denied the claim of a foreman for overtime pay and for rest days on the ground that the duties and responsibilities of a foreman falls under the definition of managerial staff. Then number 4 are field personnel. These are those that the performance of their jobs or services is not supervised by the employer. The outside salesman or field personnel work individually with no restrictions, respecting the time he shall work, and he can earn more or he can earn little. So instead of overtime fee, they receive commission as the form of compensation. An example of this class is the Autobus Transport System versus Bautista in 2005. Then the fifth one are domestic helpers and persons in the personal service of another. So who are these employees under this provision of the law? These are those who perform such service in the employer's home, except of course house personnel that are being hired by the company. So in this case, they are excluded class because they are governed by the Kasambahay law. The next class are those workers paid by result of their work, no? So they are excluded because they are compensated based on the work that they have completed. Example, if you are aware of the Pacquiaoan system, no, where workers are being paid based on their outputs, no, or workers are paid per piece or per task or by task performed. Then we have class, what do we mean by hours work? These are all hours for which an employee was being covered under the Act and is employed and required to give to the employer, including all time during which an employee is on duty or at a prescribed workplace, in all time the employee is suffered or permitted to work. So under the Labor Code, Article 83, it was provided that the hours work is 8 hours per day. So the explanation to this class is that for the workers, no, to be safeguarded as far as their health and their welfare are concerned, no, and also to minimize unemployment by utilizing different shifts, no. But class, as far as or as regards to health personnel, they render almost 48 hours plus 30% additional compensation for at least if they are to take charge of 100 bed capacity. Now, my next question, classes, what are considered as hours work? This means, class, all the time that the employee is required to be on duty or all the time that the employee is suffered or permitted to work. Now, if an employee stays in the workplace and wait for substitute, the workplace cannot be left and the workplace cannot be left as unmanned. It is compensable because he was forced by some circumstances. However, please be reminded also, class, that meal time is not compensable. So what are the rules and regulations in determining hours or work hours, no? So first is all hours are hours work which employee is required to give his employer regardless of whether or not such hours are spent in productive labor or involve physical or mental exertion. Second, all employees should not leave the workplace during working hours because that is against, we call that loafing, no? Third, if the work is necessary for employee and employer, he cannot abandon it unless with the knowledge of the immediate supervisor. And the fourth one is the time during which an employee is inactive by reason of interruptions in his work beyond his control shall be considered time. Now, class, my next question is waiting time considered as hours work? The answer there, class, is yes, but not all waiting time is compensable. Predominantly for the benefit of the employers. This according to cargo driver, waitress, and waiters. No, these are true. No, to those who are drivers of cargo vehicles, for waitresses or waiters, and also for those on-call employees where they are required to be in the place of work and is within the immediate call of the employer. So again, example here, class, you have truck drivers who are being sent to some places, no, outside the vicinity of the office or the business. So for instance, class, there was a truck driver being sent from Manila to Dagupan, leaving at 6 in the morning and arriving 12 noon. He's being relieved from all duty for the return trip, no, in the afternoon, no, 6 in the afternoon, let's say. So the idle time there is not a working time, but he is waiting to be engaged, class, no. Now, next question, classes, is the travel time compensable? The answer is, of course, it depends on the nature of the travel involved. However, class, always remember, in cases of travel, there should be a travel order and it should be on official time. So the time spent is compensable, no, during the travel time, or we call that working time, if there is an emergency call outside his regular work or outside of his working hours, such as during holidays or non-working days, no. So part of the principal activities or job of the employee, no, the task to be performed is part of his duty or of the activities or his job. So in that case, they are required to report at a meeting place, or let's say to receive some instructions or to perform some work there. Now let's talk about meals period. So class, meals period should not be less than 60 minutes, no, to give comfort and benefit to the employee. But if he or she spent his time during this period, it shall be counted, or he has to work until 4 in the afternoon. That is class if he uses that 1 hour, let's say 12 to 1, as a work time. Please be reminded also class that we have the ARTA Act, no, or the Anti-Red Tape Act, that provides that there should not be non-break, no, so that those who are having transactions or processes can be served, no, during the time between 12 and noon to 1 in the afternoon. Now, my next question, class, is can the meal period, no, be shortened? The answer is, of course, yes, no? However, class, this shortened meal period is to be included in computing hours work and with full pay. So these are the instances by which meal period can be shortened. Where one is where the work is non-manual or not involves serious physical exertion. The second is where the establishment regularly operate not less than 16 hours a day, and where there is actual or impending emergencies, no? And fourth is where the work is necessary to prevent serious loss of perishable goods. So in those cases, class, a meal period of 1 hour can be shortened, and of course it should be paid. So for instance, class, we have the case of Grace, who works as a sales lady in the Robinson department store, whose schedule is as follows: 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., then 1:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. So she was given a meal break of between 1 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. In short, she has only 30 minutes. So the question is that meal break from 1 to 1:30 p.m. considered a working time? The answer is, of course, yes. However, class, there are also cases where shortened period is not compensable. However, there has to be some agreement between the employer and the employee as regulated by the DOLE. No? First is if the employees voluntarily agree in writing to a shortening of the meal period of 30 minutes. So, by that, they have waived the overtime fee. Second is there will be no diminution in salary. The third one is in the cases of coffee breaks in the morning or in the afternoon. So again, class, the time you spent in having your coffee breaks, no, even if it is being shortened, they are not compensable. Now, let's talk about overtime work. As provided under Article 87 of the Labor Code, the computation of our overtime as during ordinary days, you have, of course, your daily salary over the number of hours per day times 125% times the number of hours of your overtime. However, during holiday or day of rest, you have the daily salary over the number of hours per day times 130% times the number of hours of the overtime. So what is overtime, class? This is when an employee works extra time. This can include work done beyond their ordinary hours of work or outside the agreed number of hours or outside the spread of ordinary hours. And what is this overtime pay? This refers to the additional pay for the work performed in excess of the 8 hours a day. So I have a question, class. Is the express permission of the employer necessary for the employee to be entitled to overtime pay? So, based on Article 84, Paragraph B of the Labor Code, it provides that all the time during which an employee is suffered or permitted to work. Now, if no work is required nor necessary in the workplace and the employee extended the stay therein would not justify his entitlement to overtime pay. Okay, class? So, please remember that. If you'll just extend your hours there or your stay in the office without any requirement from your employer or your stay there is not necessary, then you are not entitled for an overtime pay. So you can check, class, regarding this provision of the law, an example case or a case example between Ryutan versus National Rice and Corn Corporation in 1962. The next, class, is what is a compressed work week? A compressed work allows an employee to work a traditional 35 to 40-hour work week in less than the traditional number of work days. So, mainly, compressed work schedule options may be negotiated, of course. No? For example, a full-time employee scheduled for 40 hours per week could work 4 10-hour days instead of 5 8-hour days. Now, my question is, what is the provision of the law regarding compressed work week? So, instead of working 8 hours from Monday to Saturday, let's say the employee work 9.5 hours Monday to Friday, then 8 to 12 noon or 1 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Beyond 6:30 p.m., the employee is now eligible for overtime pay. So, remember, class, the Department of Labor and Employment agreed on this scheme since it is supported by majority of employees. So, but in cases where the firm or the company or firms are using substances that are hazardous to health, then they need some certification from accredited agencies for the safety, by safety organ that are working 8 hours beyond is still safe for the workers. Now, another question, class, is can overtime offset undertime? First, let's define what is this offset or offsetting of time. This is a feature that is being used to exchange the schedules between a working day and a rest day. So, my question earlier is, can the overtime offset for undertime? So, the labor code provides under Article 88 that undertime work on any particular days shall not be offset or offsetted by overtime work on any other day. So, this undertime should be deducted from the salary, while the overtime should be paid, of course. Now, next question, class, is can overtime work be mandated? So, class, please be reminded that overtime work call is voluntary and not mandatory. So, this is also an answer to the provision of the Constitution against involuntary servitude. However, Article 89 of the Code provides that it is allowed to require employee to perform overtime work, but of course with overtime pay. Okay? So these are the instances by which a mandatory and overtime may be required to the employees, such as when the country is at war or it is an emergency, there is an emergency declared by the president, or when it is necessary to prevent loss of life or property, or because of public safety, in cases of fire, flood, typhoon, epidemic, disaster, earthquake, and similar circumstances. Another class is when there is an urgent work to be performed on the machines or installations of equipments in order to avoid some loss or damage to the employer. Then in cases where The work is necessary in order to prevent loss or damage to perishable goods. That is, if the business is with raw products, no, or raw materials. And the fifth one is where the completion of the continuation of the work started before 8 hours is necessary to prevent serious obstruction. Now, another question, class, is can the right to claim overtime pay be waived? No? So, the provision of the law is that the right to claim overtime pay is not subject to waiver, no, due to public policy unless to exchange some valuable privileges. Then we have, class, in the case of night shift differential. Article 86 of the Code provides that every employee shall be paid a night shift differential not less than 10%. This is because there might be some circumstances or consequences of this night shift to our employees, such as due to lack of sunlight, it might result to anemia for the employee, or tuberculosis, or some predisposed ills, or what night work brings to the employees, such as increased liability to some eye strain or accidents. No, that's why there should be a differential of not less than 10% of their salaries. But there is an exemption to this class, such as establishment that employ not more than 5 employees, such as retail or service establishment, or mini stops like 7-Eleven and the like, no? So there are some benefits that are being extended to night workers as provided in Republic Act 10151, such as the right to undergo a health assessment without charge, the right to mandatory facilities like comfort rooms, resting quarters, facility for eating and potable drinking water, the right to be certified by a competent physician as unfit to render night shift, the right of pregnant women to transfer to day work, the right for adequate compensation, the right of a woman employee against dismissal or being unable to render night work, and the right to be consulted by the employer on the details of the night work schedules. How about the weekly rest periods? Article 91 of the Code mandates that it shall be the duty of every employer, whether operating for profit or not, to provide of his employee a rest period not less than 24 hours after every 6 days normal work days. So you might ask, class, is the 1 day rest period always a Sunday? The answer here, class, is no. Because Article 91 also provides that the employer shall determine the weekly rest day of his employees. He should respect also, of course, the preference of his employee and, of course, his religious worships or affiliations. In addition, class, employee cannot be compelled to work on his schedule of rest day. That's under the labor code. Except for these cases. One is in case of emergencies such as those caused by serious accidents, by fire, flood, earthquake, typhoon, epidemic, calamity, and other cases that endangers the public safety. Second is when there is urgent work to be performed on machines or installation of equipments in order to avoid some loss or damage to the employer, or when the work is necessary to prevent loss or damage to perishable goods, or when the nature of work is continuous now for 7 days, and when the work is necessary to avail of favorable weather. Now we have class overtime work. So, when you say overtime, these are any hours worked by an employee that exceed their normally scheduled working hours. So, the overtime rate pay varies, of course, between companies and by specifics of the overtime, such as the number of overtime hours worked. Okay? But standard overtime rates include time and a half and, of course, double time. So earlier class, we have mentioned of how this overtime work is being paid. So if the schedule of the rest day, that's when the work is during regular holiday, he is entitled to an additional premium of 30% of his regular holiday rate of 200% based on his regular wage rate. Now, next question, class, is what if an employee is made or permitted to work on a holiday? So, Section 4325 of the Labor Manual provides that on holidays, being days or rest and cessation from work, laborers are given the opportunity to satisfy their mental, moral, and spiritual needs. So, a laborer is deprived of that opportunity to satisfy those needs when he is compelled to work during holidays. And it is that deprivation which the law seeks to compensate in requiring employers to give additional compensation for the service rendered by their laborers during those days. So what are these regular holidays or non-working days? So under Executive Order number 292 of the Administrative Code of the Philippines in 1987, no, it provides that regular holidays that include, you have New Year's Day, Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, then Araw ng Kagitingan, you have Independence Day, Labor Day, National Heroes Day, we also have the Eid al-Fitr, we have the Ada, we have the Bonifacio Day, Christmas Day, Rizal Day. While for non-working holidays, we have the Ninoy Aquino Day, we have the All Saints Day, we have the last day of the year of the New Year's January. Okay, so those are the regular holidays and non-working holidays. So now, class, if an employee works in any of those regular days, he or she shall be entitled to at least twice 100% of his regular salary. Now, if the holidays falls on the scheduled rest day of the employee, then the rate would be 260%. But even the employee did not work during holiday, he is still received his regular daily rate. Or during special non-working holidays, no work, no pay. No? So if the employee render his or her service, the rate would be daily salary rate over daily salary over the rate times 130%. But if the holiday falls during the rest day, that would be daily salary over the rate times 150. But if it falls during it's double holiday plus the rest day, the rate would be daily salary over the rate times 390. So triple, no? But always remember, class, establishment below 10 employees are not entitled to the additional compensation. The next, class, we have the service incentive leaves. So, employee who has rendered 1 year of service shall be entitled to a yearly service incentive leave or service incentive. So, 5 days leave, that is equivalent to 5 days leave with pay. So when we say at least 1 year of service, this means that the service is within 12 months, either it's continuous or broken. Now, my question is it allowed that the service incentive leave converted into cost equivalent? The answer is yes. So again, class, the service incentive leaves are given to employees who may want to take a leave from work and is still getting paid, no, on their absences. So their leave credits may be used for whatever reason, and the employer is required to pay the cash equivalent of the unused leave credits of the employees. Then we have the sick and vacation leave. So again, class, service incentive leave is mandatory, while sick leave and vacation leaves are voluntary in nature. So it is a matter of agreement between the employer and the employees through their collective bargaining agreement. Then how about the maternity leave? Article 133 provides that every employer shall grant to any pregnant employee who has rendered an aggregate service of at least 6 months for the last 12 months a maternity leave of at least 2 weeks prior to the expected dates of delivery in another 4 weeks after normal delivery or abortion with full pay based on her regular wages. Okay, so the maternity leave is usually 120 days. And if once extended, it is without pay. Then the provision of maternity leave under the Social Security System, Section 14, Paragraph A. A female member who has paid at least 3 monthly contributions in the 12-month period immediately preceding the semester of her childbirth or miscarriage shall be paid 100% salary credit for 60 days to 78 days. Okay, so the employee, what are the requirements? The employee should inform his or her employer. B, the full payment shall be advanced by the employer within 30 days, and the Social Security System will reimburse 100% maternity benefits given by the employer. Then, how about paternity leave? No, this is under Republic Act 8187 or the Paternity Leave Act of 1997. This is only applicable for the first 4 deliveries of legitimate spouse, whether is working in the public or in the private sector. So, in that case, the employee should notify his employer about the expected date of such delivery by the legitimate spouse. And last class is the battered woman leave. No, that is under Republic Act 9262 or the Anti-Violence Against Women and Children. So in this case class, victim shall be entitled to take a paid leave of absence up to 10 days. And the employer, of course, who shall prejudice the right of the person under this section shall be penalized. Okay? So that would be all class for this topic and for your activity. Please prepare an insight paper. Just choose one of the articles under this articles found in these links and give your insights or your opinions. One with domestic workers, the other is why do maids have to wear uniform, and of course, for your references, you have also here if you want to have additional information. Okay? So, again, class, please submit your outputs in the Google Classroom. So, thank you for watching. See you in the next video.